So in this video, I want to go over how to track calories, macros, all that stuff, but also the toolbox that you have available at your disposal to lose fat. All the tools you have basically that will help you along the way of a fat loss journey. And I think it goes overlooked because so many people just kind of do everything at once, a huge drastic change right off the bat, right off day one. And before you know it, a month later, they're totally exhausted. They've dug themselves into such a deep hole that they cannot keep going, and they end up relapsing to right back basically where they started. So I want to touch on this in more detail because again, I think it goes overlooked, and it makes the process of losing fat, the whole journey, a lot easier if you know and understand when to deploy these tools and how much of a change you should be doing right off the bat, or maybe a month in or 2 months in, whatever it is. So let's start off with that, the kind of this toolbox concept. Basically what that means is when you enter a fat loss journey, you have several tools at your disposal to use along the way to help you create that calorie deficit. Remember, calorie deficit is the king that will determine whether you lose weight or not, right? You have to be in a calorie deficit, otherwise you will not lose weight, period. No matter how hard you train in the gym, no matter how much cardio you do, if you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight, okay? So all these tools will help you create that calorie deficit in order, again, to lose and drop that body fat. So the first and foremost, probably the most obvious one, is lowering your calories, the amount of food you are intaking on a day-to-day basis, right? That is probably the biggest tool, and that's the most obvious one. As soon as you lower your calories, you're going to be in a calorie deficit, and then you will obviously start to drop weight. However, obviously everyone plateaus, and then knowing what to do next is very important to continue that fat loss and break any plateaus. So first tool obviously is your calories, lowering your calories. The second tool is your cardio. Another pretty obvious one is cardio obviously will help you create that calorie deficit. The more you do, the more of a calorie deficit you're gonna be. The third one is your step count, right? How many daily steps are you taking every single day? 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 10,000. That contributes a lot, again, to energy expenditure, which will help you create that calorie deficit. Another one that probably goes overlooked that you may not even be aware of is your NEAT, your non-exercise activated thermogenesis. So basically, like everything I'm doing now, this twitching, everything you do that's not actively engaged in like cardio or your workouts, right? Even just twitching and doing the dishes or doing the laundry, whatever it is, that all contributes to NEAT. And obviously, the more of that you do over 24 hours, that can add up quite a bit as well. Especially if you have like coffee and stuff like that, that will help you kind of fuel those activities. So anyway, those are kind of the most common tools that you can use. Now, the next question is, when should you deploy these? Probably the biggest mistake that I see by far, and you guys probably have all, or at least know a person that does this as well, is they want to start a fat loss journey and they do everything at once. They cut their calories in half. They do an hour of cardio. They go for their workouts. They do pretty much everything right off the bat. And yes, obviously you're going to drop a lot of weight right away in the first week, but then 2, 3, 4 months down the line, how are you going to possibly beat that, right? The goal, in my opinion, of a fat loss journey should be to milk as much fat loss by doing as little as possible. That, in my opinion, is the most sustainable and the best way to do a cut. Lose as much fat as possible by eating as much as possible and by doing as little as possible. Only when you plateau for 4 or 5 days consecutively is when you should adjust one of those variables and create that further deficit. So for me personally, let's use me for an example. I start my cut at 3,000 calories, right? Week 1, I'll probably just lose weight, but just kind of start tracking my calories and macros. And then after maybe a week or 2, I plateau. And only then I'll slowly start to, the first thing I do personally is just lower my calories. I don't like doing too much cardio. So I'll go 2,900, then 2,800, then 2,700, 2,600. And then I'll stop at about 2,500. That'll take me like 4, 5, 6 weeks to get there, right? Once I've hit that point, then I'll introduce cardio. Do 1 cardio session a week at 20, 25 minutes, then 2, and then 3, and then increase the duration of those volume sessions to maybe 30 minutes or 35 minutes. And you guys get the point, right? So calories, and then increasing cardio, and then maybe I'll go for walks as well. Actively trying to increase my step count, maybe parking farther away from the grocery store or the gym, and getting those extra steps accumulated over the day can make a massive impact on your creating that calorie deficit, right? So again, then that's when I'll start to do that as well. Start tracking my steps with you can actually use your iPhone or the health app on the iPhone. Obviously, Apple Watch or Fitbit or any smartwatch tracks your steps, obviously. So that can be another tool that you can use. And the last one you can't really track is your NEAT, like I mentioned. That's just kind of how much energy you have throughout the day, how much twitching and doing, like how much activities outside of cardio and working out are you doing on a day-to-day basis. And with this, obviously coffee helps a lot. Any thermogenics that help you kind of obviously give you energy throughout the day. So those are kind of the first thing right off the bat is this toolbox that I think was very overlooked, and not to use everything right away, but to strategically deploy tools and adjust variables. Let's say you have 16 weeks. You only need to do one at a time to create that deficit, right? Like I mentioned, the goal should be to lose as much fat at the highest possible calorie interval by doing as little as possible. That, in my opinion, makes the cut super easy, makes it enjoyable. You can still go out, enjoy your social life, go out with friends, go have a drink, dinner, whatever it is, while still making progress. That is the best way, in my opinion, to do a cut. And then only once you plateau for 3, 4, 5 days consecutively is when you slowly need to make an adjustment. And again, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Even just dropping 100 calories, again, will create that new deficit in order to continue that fat loss and break that plateau. So the next thing I want to touch on is how to actually track your calories and macros, right? The easiest way by far is to use an app called MyFitnessPal. It's definitely the most popular one in the fitness industry. Pretty much everyone I know uses it. Most of my clients use it. Super easy way to track your calories. You can literally go scan any food that has a barcode. You can literally scan it, put in how much of it you had. You can weigh your foods out. You can literally, the database of foods in that app is ginormous. Even most restaurants will have their menu in their database. So again, super easy way to track your calories and macros. And it becomes, yes, it's a little bit tedious at first because obviously you have never used the app, you're not used to it, and you have nothing saved within the app. After a week of you tracking your stuff, most of the stuff saved, and you literally click like one button, boom, done. So it becomes like habitual after a week or two. And again, it becomes super easy, pretty much a non-negotiable at that point to track your calories and macros. Again, super easy. Another app that I recently started using, probably within the last year or so, is an app called Chronometer, right? This app does the exact same as MyFitnessPal, tracks calories, macros, super easy, has a good database, not quite as big as MyFitnessPal, but the thing I like about Chronometer is you're able to track your micronutrients, right? So your macros are obviously the fats, the proteins, the carbs. The micros are all the vitamins and minerals, right? So that to me has become more and more important as I start to look more into the health side of and the health and longevity side of fitness, which I really care about now. Not so much when I started because my initial goal was just to get as big as possible. But now more so, I really am taking care and looking more so into my micronutrients and making sure that I'm not deficient. And it's cool because obviously when you track your macros, it shows you what you're deficient in, and then it's easier to know what to supplement with, right? You don't need to have every supplement under the sun if you're getting enough from food, but the ones that you're not getting enough of, then you know specifically what to get, and it's easier and more efficient, more effective, obviously, to supplement with. So those are the two apps I use. MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, either works great. Again, you don't need the paid version for either. The free version is more than enough. I think to track the full micronutrient profile, you might need the paid version. But again, just the basic tracking to make fat loss progress is more than enough for the free version for both MyFitnessPal and Chronometer. Now, how much of a calorie deficit do you need to start making progress in your fat loss journey, right? And the answer is nothing crazy. If you're just beginning, I would literally recommend with like a 200, 250 calorie deficit to start off with. Then once you plateau, then slowly start to increase that deficit. 300 calories, 400 calories, 500 calories. However, I would cap that at a limit. So for men, I would not go below 2,000 calories, obviously depending on how much you weigh and how big you are, and women 1,200 calories. Because if you go too far below that, you greatly increase the risk of becoming micronutrient deficient, right? Minerals, vitamins, which you don't want because obviously that's very, very essential for your body and your overall health. So I wouldn't go too low on the calorie side. Again, men around 2,000 calories, women around 1,200 calories. But once you start approaching those numbers, again, which which would take you a long time, ideally, probably a few months, then start to include other metrics or other variables of your toolbox that you can use to create that deficit. So things like increasing your step count, or start to include cardio. Both of those things can be used to increase your energy expenditure and again create that calorie deficit. So overall, again, you don't need nothing crazy. Start off slow and only increase that deficit once you plateau for 3, 4, 5 consecutive days in a row. Now, when it comes to the ratio of fats to proteins, you have a little bit more wiggle room of exactly how you want to distribute these. So obviously protein is number one, protein's king. And then I would say fat is just a little bit more important than carbohydrates, just because your body absolutely needs them in order to function, right? They're responsible for your hormones, synthesizing your hormones, your mental, your brain health, and a whole bunch more. So definitely do not lower your calories to a very low level, because your body actually needs them in order to survive and function normally, right? You've definitely heard of essential amino acids and essential fatty acids because they're essential because your body cannot produce them on its own. It needs it from outside sources, aka your diet, right? And with carbs, there's no such thing as essential carbohydrates, right? It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. So your body can actually function without carbs. However, my personal preferences, I would definitely not completely throw away carbs, because your body is great at using carbs as the primary source of fuel and energy for your day-to-day activities and obviously your workouts. So definitely include carbs. Just know that protein, then fat, and then carbs kind of the order of importance. So we have protein set, like I mentioned, for most people, 1 gram per pound of body weight. With fats, I would say at least 15% of your calories come from fats, and then the rest can kind of be split into your carbs. So just a quick golden rule. Remember, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fats is 9 calories. So just keep that in mind when you are calculating your maintenance calories and your calorie deficit. Always start with protein first. 1 gram per pound of body weight times 4 is the amount of calories you're consuming from proteins, and then move on to fats. Again, minimum 15% of your fats, of your calories should be fats, and then the rest can be distributed however which way you want between carbs and fats, depending on your preferences and what food groups you like more. Now, the next thing I want to touch on is all about meal timing. How much of a difference will meal timing make on your overall progress, and if it affects your fat loss at all? The answer is very, very minimally, okay? Meal timing, I think, in my opinion, is way overhyped by a lot of people. It's not gonna move the needle at all. The thing that will is your net daily calorie deficit. Whether or not you're in a calorie deficit over 24 hours is what's ultimately going to determine whether you lose fat or not, right? So meal timing, if you want to optimize absolutely everything, again, it's not going to move the needle, but if you want to optimize absolutely everything, I would suggest spreading out your protein across all your meals versus having all your protein in one sitting, just so you can activate muscle protein synthesis more often. With carbs, I would suggest having carbs 1 later at night and 2 before your workouts. You'll notice, especially for me, when I have carbs early on in the day, when I have breakfast, when I have carbs as my first meal, I am much more hungry subsequently for the rest of the day, right? As soon as my blood sugar gets spiked, then it's like the floodgates open, and it's much harder to maintain my hunger, because my blood glucose has these spike and dips throughout the day. So most of the time, I will save my carbs throughout night. I train at night, so I'll have a big meal of carbs, a big serving of carbs like an hour, 2 hours before to fuel that workout, and then as well post-workout to obviously refill those glycogen stores that you use throughout the workouts. But again, try my pro tip here, try and save your carbs for at night when you can actually enjoy them versus in the day, because I find when you have a lot of carbs in the day, you just become, especially when you're already in a calorie deficit, you become a lot more hungry, and it's a lot harder to control yourself when you have those dips and spikes of blood sugar, right? So again, meal timing will not move the needle at all. If you want to optimize, I'd suggest those tips, but the most important thing to kind of round off this section is your net calorie deficit over 24 hours is the most important thing. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight, period.